Hello and welcome to the fifth episode of Machine Guns in Your Movies podcast. I'm Sasha.
I'm Joel, and today we're looking at one of the newest, definitely the newest, let's say the movie we've looked at in this entire podcast so far. It would be 2024's The Substance, starring Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, and it was directed by Coralie Fargeat. And yeah, it's an outstanding film. But actually, if I'm being honest, I didn't think it was quite the masterpiece that other people are. But in all likelihood, but it is a film with much to talk about. It revolves around a aging fitness guru in the same mold as Jane Fonda, played by Demi Moore, called Elizabeth Sparkle, and with her age causing issues, she decides to go with a highly experimental drug procedure that alters her body and causes a duplicate, sort of doppelganger to spawn out, played by Margot Qualley. And yeah, from there it gets way more complicated and far more gruesome. But yeah, it's been getting as some of you may know, it's been getting, as many of you would know actually, it's been generating quite a bit of buzz in the last few months in the awards season. And it actually, if I'm not mistaken, the Demi Moore has actually successfully won Best Actress in a comedy or musical, which is just a funny category in and of itself. But it's been getting quite a bit of good reviews, and yeah. But the thing is, there's much to talk about in this film, and yeah, it seems in the vein of. Ironically, one thing I'll notice right away is that there's a lot of talk of it being very Cronenberg inspired with the whole body horror aspect. But I noticed similarities to some older films, like I've mentioned. I've spoken with my co-host about this. It reminds me of the plot of Rejuvenatrix. It's a 1980s horror movie with. And the end result is different. It's an actress who gets an experimental procedure to actually make herself younger. But the end result is that she turns into a monster, and the very name is evocative of, I believe, Larry Cohen's The Stuff. But yeah, it's a thing all its own. But one of the things I've noticed, and I wanted to discuss this, is that looking at it, I noticed that this is a bit odd, but I've noticed similarities between this, like references to this film and Kubrick's films. Like when Elizabeth goes to her film studio, it really the hallway really reminds me of The Shining, like just the colors, the 70s decor, and the extremely wide, the very lengthy shot that it's shown at. It looks like when Danny's wandering around in the Overlook Hotel. And also when they do transformations, some of the visuals that, some of the images and things that Elizabeth sees through her eyes is, it's rather evocative of the things where the same sort of visuals we see in 2001: A Space Odyssey. But that's just me. Sasha, what do you think?
I haven't thought about 2001 Space Odyssey stuff, but yeah, that might be something that to think about. Yeah, the shining elements. Yeah, I definitely noticed the carpet. The way that the carpets look, and the way the rooms look, the way the bathroom looks when she first hears that she will be fired from the other cabin in the. From the character played by Dennis Quaid, from the producer, is also pretty similar. And it's like this red and white bathroom from The Shining, and the angles and the symmetrical compositions of the frames are pretty similar to The Shining generally. I'm sure there was some influence, visual one, and on the thematic level, from my point of view, it was supposed to show that element of the coldness and the alienation and kind of the territory where she's like been a part of for many years, but it's still not very friendly to her. Something similar to the Overlook, but it might just be a visual inspiration without much. That might just be me, having my own theory. It might just be the visual inspiration for her because she likes The Shining, and there's lots of inspirations obviously in this film, but the Shining and Kubrick generally is definitely the one that I agree on that.
Yeah, I don't know if how intense it is. There's also that scene where I'm not certain if you recall it. It's not a major thing, and most people might overlook it. But as watching it the second time, I noticed it, and it started to gain my attention. It's when certain transformations between when it goes from her alter ego played by Sue, it goes to the scene switch to that one. It reminds me of it reminded me a bit of the Hunger Games when Katniss does her has one of her dress go on fire or something of that sort, or the it's evocative of the poster. But during the transitions from Elizabeth to Sue, we often see this image of something catching on a fire pattern or something of that sort, where I think one's a dragon, one's a bird, one's a heart, or something of that sort. And I couldn't quite figure out what the symbolism is supposed to mean.
Mm-hmm. I haven't seen. I have seen just bits of Hunger Games, so I cannot really. I cannot really speak about that. But
I don't
it's
think
not.
it was a reference to that movie. It's just it reminds me of that, is what I would say. I doubt think it's like it's they're thematically they're extremely different films, but
Yeah.
it's more of an interest of like I was interested whether the what is it what happens. It reminds me of it, but I don't think it is. But it's more of a case of I wonder what that means. It's an interesting scene, and haven't heard too many people speak about it.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I guess when we look at it, it now thinking about it, it reminds me more of a kind of a Gaspar Noé film, Enter the Void. In a way, there's this kind of psychedelic after that moments, the soul traveling and things like that, and there's lots of these images, similar images, and it simply might be basically the breaking of her like a traveling of her consciousness and to the other body, and the breaking of herself, basically, in a way. I mean, it's still there's repeated words that we see. Remember, you're the one, and things like that. But it's like, but her consciousness is the one. But still, we over the time it kind of cracks, and we see those divisions. But but when it comes to these scenes, it's more like, for me, like this kind of a psychedelic visual way of showing this kind of like a transition between one body to the other, basically, to the one consciousness traveling, consciousness traveling from one body to the other. That would be my interpretation of it. I mean, there's lots of this kind of these were very short part of the second moments.
In fact, in fact, yes, a lot of a lot of the words you just used remind me of the very opening one that, what is it, emphasize sort of the idea, the central theme behind the film. Well, it's one of the many themes behind the film is when they're preparing an egg. Eggs have a sort of like, I think it's like there's a comment by Dennis Quaid's character about eggs losing women losing their fertility and their eggs getting worse characteristic as they get older. But also that's a very, so there's sort of a tie to, I think that I felt that the movie had mildly feminist, and not strongly, but somewhat mild feminist leanings. And yes, at the very beginning, we see eggs sort of breaking in two. It's injected with what I suspect is the serum that they use to do the transformation. And yeah, it starts to break away, and it shows sort of like it goes through a sort of mitosis, excuse me, where it's goes into different pieces, and it seems to be more in line with the like the idea of. In fact, that's how it works basically. When Elizabeth first injects it for the first time, Sue kind of crawls out of her back or something of that sort, and that in a process that seems like not only incredibly painful, but seems like it physically shouldn't be possible. But I guess this is the universe that the film inhabits, and
yeah, now I'm thinking about another aspect. It's the I was going to mention some of the things in the movie, but I was does it me or does the movie feel almost voyeuristic or something of that sort? Like when they first go into the bathroom, there are very extended, long nude scenes of both actresses, Demi and Margot, and I almost felt. I guess it's a female director, so there's. I think it almost couches her from any kind of accusation that it might be gratuitous, but there was this feeling that it's like I honestly should be here, and it's not, or like I felt I was intruding, and yeah, I also feel that way when the character of Sue ends up getting Elizabeth's old job as a fitness television fitness guru, and does her exercise. It feels incredibly sexual, like believably sexual. It might be a way of. That might be one of the other themes about the idea of generations. Basically, it's two generations coming together almost at the same time, and Sue ends up being like the Moors of Elizabeth Sparkle times have completely vanished. But yes, I'm kind of going on a bit of a tangent here. But to answer their question, it's how did you feel about the way that the movie handled sexuality and things along that nature?
Yeah, just before that, one another thing I wanted to mention, the egg imagery, the image of the egg, and there's and again I want to connect that with what you mentioned earlier with this short part of the second psychedelic transitions. Basically, there's I would say there's a lot of there's also connection between that and the cell divisions. I think at one point, several times we see basically the very short images of the cells dividing and things like that. So I think that generally that imagery is meant to be ever present through the movie, and it has obvious symbolic meaning. But also when it comes to the sexuality. Yeah, I think it was done by a female director, and I think it was meant to be like more like the way that the audience to involve the audience, to comment on the audience involvement in a way, and basically going more into the voyeuristic, even into the even more voyeuristic. Closeness and position than before, and that it was intentional, basically a comment on how the audience and the producers sees these things, intentional, over the top, basically comment on that. So now, if it, I don't know. I mean. There is there has been this debate. About that way of portraying things. If it's a male or a female director, how the comment would be. I don't think that would be much of a problem. I think people might protest more if the male director did this. But I think that even the male director could do this and still keep the comment the same. But in this case, it's the female director, and obviously, I think that was her intention, basically, to comment on the voyeurism and the involvement of the audience, especially after the Sue enters, and there we have even more transparent the themes of the film. Who were already there and already pretty clear satirical themes, satire of the way that the entertainment industry treats female body, and male body and anybody, but especially female body, how it treats it, and like a commodity, like something like always something new, always a change, always something younger, and always something like that kind of a thing. So that was quite obvious, and it's a part, I would say, of the overall style of the over-the-top style of the film generally, and all of these other things that I mentioned, like the letters being like font hundreds literally in our face repeatedly, on this flashing on the screen and things like that. It's all part of the style of the film and part of its satirical element, of satirical themes.
Yeah, I know. I just it really was an It felt like a cartoon at times. Everything's just so over the top and in your face. But and speed being in your face, I think it's funny, and it's like everyone seems to mention this scene, but I find it peculiar that one of the grossest scene in the movie of that anyone can think of is not like the horrors of the transformation or like some of the effects of the body changing and like the body morphing, but it seems to be the close-up of Dennis Quaid's character devouring a bunch of shrimp at a restaurant, and an extreme close-up of his mouth. And I don't know why I thought I'd mention this, but I thought it was amusing because for anybody who's seen the director's debut film or previous work, Revenge from 2017, there's actually a similar scene of that where a character's devouring some sort of chocolate-covered marshmallow treat, and there's an uncomfortably close shot of it going into his mouth and him chewing on it. And I was like, "Ew, this is just wrong." And it's funny she did it again, but yeah, I felt that Dennis Quaid's character was a bit two-dimensional. But what else? I did want to comment on something you said, in my opinion, I think it is correct that women have a bit of a harder time as they age, but like in the movie industry at least, in that regards, show business. But I've actually started to notice this. If you look at movies from like 2010, the 90s, the 80s, whatever, you can usually, if you see like a bunch of them in a row, you can usually spot like one or two actors or actresses who get like decent sized roles. Then they sort of disappear or vanish or something like that. Maybe they go into television or they become less common. And to my degree, I think it happens to both sexes, but I would say that it is fair assessment to say that it's a bit more noticeable with women, and especially with yeah, in that regards. But also something I noticed that was kind of odd is that Demi Moore's in her 60s, but she's playing a character in her 50s, and I thought it was the casting of Margot Qualley is almost ironic because they keep saying about young, 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 and young, and it's like Margot Qualley turned 30 the year the movie came out, so she's hardly, by Hollywood standards, she's not super young anymore. So I did think that was interesting. But did you have any further thoughts or?
I didn't know how old she is specifically, so I didn't talk about that. But I mean, when it comes to that, it's like more like how to say, there's this element of this was popular back then, and now we are having a change of style. We are having a change of the content and the style of the content. Basically, when it comes to the change of generations, in a way, I would say, yeah, that this happens to both actresses and actors. But if the surrounding is more male oriented, then it will be more like a male gaze, and it will be more female in front of the camera. But at the same time, what I wanted to say is, like, when you see the scenes with Demi Moore character, Elizabeth Sparkle, and her show, it looks more like a. It does not. There's not much effects there. There's not much over the top moment. None. I mean, at these moments, it's basically shot like these old. What's the Olivia Newton-John? I had like this. Let's Get Physical. There's music video. There these kind of Jane Fonda had these videos of the in the 80s, and I think Linnea Quigley also had that. And
did she wear clothes?
What? Where she wore clothes? Yeah, it was
shocking.
Yeah, in the reference to the Return of the Living Dead. At the end, what? Sorry.
She always Linnea Quigley did so many nude scenes. It's not even funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I recently watched the documentary Scream Queens about that period, and there's lots of interesting details about that. And yeah, there's the show that Demi Moore's character does looks basically like that, like something of the old, now something from the old times, and now, but the audience once there's obviously a change in the audience too, new generations in the audience, and change in the I don't want to say taste, but basically change of a taste with the new generations, and the producers are there to enforce that. And so I guess when the new character comes, then we have this kind of a more sexual, much more close-ups, the music becomes much more, I won't say aggressive, but much more loud, and in your face. Everything is much more over the top and in your face. And I mean, it's clear thematically what it means, but it's still, that element is like a change of the what the audience wants, and the change of generations, and change of the content of everything. So I think that these videos of Demi Moore's character basically reminded me of these old videos from the 80s, and so that I guess it has that kind of a transition meaning to them.
Yes, I thought that also something else that they do is that I think it's designed to. It's an odd phenomenon. I've mentioned Rejuvenatrix a while back, like earlier at the beginning of the call, but honestly, it goes into an odd direction. Instead of the Elizabeth's character going to becoming younger, she just a sort of semi-clone of herself, supposedly an improvement, comes out of her. And it becomes a sort of doppelganger, as I've mentioned, and basically it's a thing that goes on to live her own life. Ironically, the only thing she ends up wanting to do, I think it's because Elizabeth had her mindset on it, but it's an interesting phenomenon. I kind of wonder what the copy ends up thinking or doing. Sue comes out fully formed as an adult and seems to have knowledge of how the world works, but she shows up to be rash and impetuous at times. For example, I think it's funny, it seems to operate under the Gremlins formula, where a bunch of rules are in a side of like fantasy horror sci-fi system is given, a cinema fantastique, where a bunch of rules are set up, and throughout the entire movie, all of the rules end up getting broken, which leads to, well, at least some entertaining moments for the audiences. But yes, I thought it was interesting, and actually, this is just an observation I made. I thought it was bizarre. Some people have pointed out that Margaret Qualley had to wear prosthetic breasts to match Demi Moore's, but I thought that was irrational and an odd decision on the filmmaker's part, because if this is an imperfect copy, not imperfect, I would say, but like an alternate copy of it, I think we see younger images of Elizabeth Sparkle shown throughout the apartment, or some that are like, there's no way she was at least a bit younger when this was taken. And she doesn't look like Marga, she doesn't look like Sue too much, so I don't know why they couldn't just have her use smaller boobs or whatever, but I thought there was, I don't know, it's just something that struck me as weird. But yes, I thought it was, it's interesting that they just make a doppelganger, and it's throughout the film, Elizabeth seems to both regret it, but also think that it's a very important aspect of her. Like, she does nurture and want to care for the Sue character.
Mm-hmm. Like, almost like a mother figure, yeah. But when it comes to the breast, I don't know. I mean, I think if they did that, I think they maybe did that to be in sync with how the producer, the Dennis Quaid character, sees the next the main the actress for his show, and yeah. What I wanted to mention, I wanted to talk more about the influences here. More, I want to the obvious influences that are seen in the movie. Uh, the basically the movie, especially near the end of the movie, it becomes pretty kind of a collage of the influences of the specific directors, I would say. And I think it's connected pretty well. But do you want to comment on that, on something?
Yeah, I think you mentioned a while back that, what is it? I did think that one of the, I'll just mention a real quick bite. I think one of the movie's minor flaws is that I wish that there doesn't seem to be, the drama should be a bit stronger. Like there's a lot of good, ripe and fertile grounds to explore how the characters feel and react, but it's mostly Elizabeth being very bitter that Sue's getting everything she wants, and Sue just generally disliking the connections that they have together. It's mostly boils down. For example, I really wish that they had done more with the character of Fred, but that is what the movie went with, and but yes, no, there is a lot of it. We've mentioned Stanley Kubrick and some of the influence that I perceived, as well as the fact that obviously David Cronenberg. But I imagine you're going to we've mentioned this before, but I imagine you're going to discuss how the ending reminds me, which we will be spoiling now, but how the ending reminds
there's a spoiler here. Yeah, definitely. We will spoil things. So, I mean, if you haven't seen the film, I mean, you can watch the film and then continue to listen to, but we will spoil the ending. Yeah, well, what I wanted to say, also what I wanted to say about the thing you mentioned earlier, I think basically all the characters in this movie should not be taken literally, and all of them are the metaphor, almost an archetype, but a metaphor for a certain type of a character from an entertainment industry generally. So I mean, there's the greedy producer, there's the fading film star, there's the new star, there's the conflict, there's always that there's the breaking of the one personality into the two, like personalities which are actually one personality, and there is that conflict within herself. So there's always there's that highly symbolic and metaphorical elements, and none of this, I think none of the film should be taken literally, and should be that we should look into the reality specifically as a real life, but it comments on real life. But when it comes to this movie, it's very each of the characters is very symbolic. When it comes to the drama, you mentioned drama. It films. As Sue gets more space, the film kind of drags on a little bit for me. I mean, now I'm going to say that my criticism of the film is that it becomes a little bit repetitive with the scenes. In my opinion, it can lose about half an hour. I mentioned this before, but it can lose about half an hour, I would say, especially especially somewhere in the middle part and to the last third part. I mean, it's just mostly the repetition of the similar scenes, and we don't learn much new. And some of the characters are underdeveloped, as you mentioned, but basically my problem with it with that they could do. Yes, I understand that the style is over the top and all of that. I understand the intentions, but they could strengthen a little bit the drama and the interplay of the characters, and it could be a little bit shorter movie. I mean, it seems that's one of the things that I realized recently. Like, every movie is about 2.5 hours long. It doesn't need to be. I mean, I have nothing against movies who are even 4 hours long if there is a reason for this. But in my opinion, this movie could be about 20 minutes or 30 minutes shorter. Basically, these are some of my problems with it and with the film's drama and the development generally. I don't know what you think about that. Maybe there's some of the things.
To me, it's like I'm gonna have a confession to make. I basically watched it as like an enhanced speed this time, and it makes it more tolerable, to be honest. But because I'd already seen it, I figured why not. But all the same, it's like I feel that yes, that's very much on the dot. Tons of people have mentioned this. It's like I think it's funny we're complaining there's not enough drama, but there's also too much things in it. But I think like the umpteenth, like it just starts to drag when it's just her being like it starts to the changes start to affect Elizabeth's character, and she starts to go rotting. And I also think that's another commentary about age. Basically, it's the older character is wiser and follows the rules, but the younger character is brash and impetuous, which leads to a lot of issues cropping up. And yes, that yeah, just what yeah, I felt it could have been a bit shorter, like the whole talk show, and basically just the endless montage of them preparing food. That is to say, Elizabeth preparing food. It's also one other instance of the director Qualley making making banal things extremely gross. I don't know what it was with that woman and making us disgusted in food sometimes, but. Yes, also that really one of the really unpleasant scenes where Sue plucks a chicken leg from her stomach, imagines it, and yes, but also one of the best scenes. I will say this: one of the more when I saw it the second time after the whole debacle where she becomes a monster at the end, Sue just it goes extremely poorly, and eventually Elizabeth Sue kills Elizabeth. And because of health issues, she's supposed to get replenishment, sort of a substance from the original host replenished. She's not able to, so she just at a major New Year's Eve event, she decides to take an injection herself and morphs into a monster. And this is sort of a bookend, but a very well done one. It shows both the star on the Walk of Fame for Elizabeth Sparkle. At the very beginning, it shows a sort of time elapse that it going from being completely good condition to getting worn out over time, like some guy just dropping a burger and having difficulty picking it up and people cleaning it. And then the final shot is some sort of small portion of Elizabeth slowly making Eliza, I think her name is Eliza Sue. It's sort of a monster of some sort of mutant abomination, and that's the very last scene of the film. It slowly part of her that still resembles Elizabeth Sue ends up crawling over the Hall of Fame, the star on the Hall of Fame, Walk of Fame. And it's like I think it's more of a case of like how that's the tragedy of the story. Basically, Elizabeth should have been happy that she had fame for a bit of time. Instead, she wanted youth, and I think it said that I think it's like your legacy is permanent, but your flesh will fade away pretty quickly. And I thought that was a pretty good visual metaphor.
Yeah, great. Yeah, exactly. Right. I would say when it comes to the satire of this film, I wanted to add that there's the director is obviously not just satirizing a male gaze and the male producer, something like that. I think she's also criticizing basically also the female performers who are complicit in this, and I believe at least I saw that element in this film, and I think that's something that's part of the whole satirical layers of the film. And the last thing, or if you want something to say after that, but one of the last things I wanted to talk about is the very ending. It's very well done. It's the last 20 minutes basically. It's special effects extravaganza like we haven't seen for years, and I can understand people becoming very excited that we now have one like a body horror film which is very the film which is which use this imagery for the after many years after the directors like Cronenberg used it or something like that. And so I mean I can understand people getting excited about the ending, but I wanted to just mention that sometimes for a moment or two, sometimes the ending feels like a stitch between the the connection between these influences is not very good in a way. We have like obviously like a Cronenbergian transformation from The Fly, and we have a moment of like a blood splashing from Carrie over the audience. We have and during the film that the chicken part, the scene that you mentioned, Sue, taking out part of the chicken, and it's influenced by the Society, a film by Brian Hughes. That the whole these close-ups on the body, and the sticky like the skin, and the way the skin is filmed, and the also part of the which is also part of the final transformation. There's an obvious influence of Society and the satirical element of the film generally, and there's several of these influences which are obvious in the ending, and the ending is great, but sometimes they feel like kind of too obvious of an influence. How to say it? I mean that's something that, but at the same time, it does not matter. I mean, I think that it's handled pretty well. There's yeah, I mean that's and of the influences, I would say maybe, although that became like the thing that many people mentioned just for the when there is something like with a huge neon like lights and colors. But there's, I would say, also influence of the Gaspar Noé and the way some of the visuals are handled, and the music and the editing and everything. But yeah, I mean, there are several of these. Any comment on this, on the ending and how it was handled, the influences on the film?
I noticed other info. The first time I didn't see it, but when you mentioned it on one of our calls, I noticed it definitely the second time. I almost feel embarrassed I didn't. Carrie's. I don't dislike the film, but Carrie's not one of my favorite movies. If I'm being honest, like, it is good, but I don't think about it terribly too much. But yeah, no, I did notice influences, but other than that, I don't have much else to say. I've said my piece. It is a good film, and there's much to talk about, but there are some flaws holding it back. But all things aside, I'm really hoping it'd be really cool if Demi Moore pulls off the impossible and ends up getting the Oscar win. I don't know if she will, but I'm hoping for such that outcome.
Yeah, it would be pretty interesting. Yeah, the film got an award in the Cannes Film Festival for the screenplay, and yeah, I'm not really following Oscars that much, but it would be very good and very interesting if she gets the Oscar for the role, because she deserves it really. I mean, it's a great role. Overall, it's a very good film. I mean, it's not a masterpiece, but it's something between very good and a masterpiece. Especially, as I said, the ending is a perfect body horror extravaganza, and I think it's generally a very good film, and it has definitely my recommendation. One of the best films of the last year, if not the best, certainly in the top 3 films of the last year, I would say. So it definitely had my recommendation. Yeah.
Well, that about wraps up our thoughts. I guess. What is it? I enjoyed it too, and I would recommend it to others. And yes, we appreciate our listening audience's time, and we hope you've enjoyed our conversation about The Substance.
Thank you for listening, and we'll expect a new episode in 2 weeks. Bye.
See you later.